My project was In-Home Supportive Services, or IHSS. Essentially, if you're older or disabled and you're low income, and you're relatively functional but you need some help with day-to-day living, then IHSS will provide a worker who can help you with, and here I'll just read directly from their website, personal care, such as feeding and bathing, household tasks, such as laundry, shopping, meal preparation, and light house cleaning, transportation, protective supervision, and certain paramedical services ordered by a physician. Over time, there have been a lot of studies that show that people who stay longer in their own homes are happier, their health outcomes are better, they live longer, and they're less depressed, which I think is obvious to any of us who have ever been in a hospital for any amount of time, even if it was just to ask where the Starbucks is. And also, more importantly to the government, is staying in your home saves the government a lot of money. So it's really worthwhile to fund a program like IHSS, because putting someone in an institution is just so much more expensive. My research question was, how are the needs of a rural population different from that of the urban population? And is IHSS meeting the special needs of the rural population? In order to find out, let's talk to a few IHSS workers. Hi, I'm IHSS worker number 1. I cared for my mother about 20 years ago. I had promised her when I was younger that I would never put her in an institution, and when she needed care, I brought her home to live with me. She needed 24-hour care, and obviously IHSS couldn't pay for all of that, but I felt very, very lucky to get the money I did. If I hadn't gotten the IHSS money, I would have either had to quit my job, and then I would have lost my home, or I would have had to put her in an institution because I couldn't quit my job. So IHSS really allowed my mother to live in her home and live with dignity and live in a place where people knew her and loved her and cared for her until the very end.
Were there any challenges to living rurally?
Oh yeah. Did I ever tell you about the time that my mother had a heart attack during a snowstorm? The ambulance tried to come up without tire chains and almost slid off a cliff, and then my car stopped working and the closest mechanic was 60 miles away?
Well, I think I get the gist of it.
Yep. But living where we live also provided us with a strong community who helped me out whether I called them or not. For instance, that night a neighbor saw me, called another neighbor, and a total stranger came over and fixed my car. Also, a bunch of young women in the neighborhood rotated so that every Monday night I had a few hours to myself and they would watch my mother while I went out and had a cup of coffee. IHSS was really a wonderful program for us.
So you feel positively towards IHSS?
Oh, definitely. I hope that this is a program that will keep being funded for a long time.
Welcome, IHSS worker number 2. Tell me a bit about your experience with IHSS.
Well, I just finished high school, and I wasn't starting college for about 8 months, so I got a job working for IHSS in Northern California. The woman I worked for, she was pretty functional, but she was a hoarder. And so her house had been classified as unsafe for living, so my job was really just to help her clear out the house and make it fit for human habitation.
And connected to that, were there any special challenges to living rurally?
Well, I guess the chickens and the llamas were a rural issue.
Excuse me?
Yeah, she made her living breeding llamas, and I guess she sold them. And I guess she really loved them, too. One of them would follow her around and keep his head on her shoulder at all times. Anyhow, she wasn't well enough to care for them. They're pretty big animals, so she asked me to do it.
And the chickens?
Yeah, she had chickens for eggs and meat. Remember, she was low income, so it was really a source of food for her. She wanted me to clean out the coop and stuff like that. By the time she was done, the truth is, the coop was cleaner than her house. I wasn't really supposed to use IHSS hours to care for chickens or llamas. It's definitely not in their stated mission, but that's what she needed, you know?
Well, thank you, IHSS worker number 2.
No problem.
Welcome, IHSS worker number 3. Tell us a bit about your experiences.
I was an IHSS worker for my husband. He was a veteran, and he had a lot of PTSD issues, and he couldn't work, so I was his worker. And after we divorced, I realized that I really liked working for IHSS, and I kept working for other people, mainly strangers.
And related to that, were there any challenges to rural versus urban work?
Yeah, the driving was really horrible. The last woman I worked for, she lived in Pine Mountain Club, so she was over an hour drive from the nearest pharmacy and probably an hour and a half drive from her doctor. But you don't get paid for transportation. So you get paid for any time spent in the doctor's office, but I had to drive 3 hours in order to get her to and from her doctor's office. So that was kind of a nightmare. And I would have to put in these 3 hours of unpaid labor every time she saw her doctor, which was fairly frequently. in the city it wouldn't be a big deal. You'd be driving 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 10 minutes of unpaid labor. It's not such a big deal. But 3 hours, it just wasn't right.
That sounds like a pretty serious issue. Thank you for sharing with us.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
And lastly, IHSS worker number 4. Thank you for being with us.
Glad to be here. Actually, I'm not an IHSS worker. My wife was an IHSS worker, and I would always get roped into doing extra care. I did property clearance for her clients. I did some plumbing. I repaired one guy's porch, stuff like that.
Wow, that's really nice of you.
Yeah. Well, these were people who didn't have too many others in their lives who could help them, and they couldn't always afford the help, that they needed. So I would do the man jobs for them. And, honestly, my wife could talk Eskimos into buying snow, so she talked me into doing a little extra work.
And did you have any rural clients, and what were the extra challenges of working with them?
Well, when my wife started, she had to drive down to Bakersfield a number of times. She had to go to get fingerprinted and get the police background check, and she had to go for training. And each time, it was a bit of an expenditure. It's 60 miles, so she had to pay for gas, and she wasn't getting paid for it. So driving was an issue. Driving her clients' places was an issue. Again, we were pretty far from the amenities that they often needed. So that was, hours of driving. I think a lot of IHSS workers do that because they care about the people they work for. And I think the program is kind of counting on workers to do some free work for them, just because they're good people.
That is really beautiful. Thank you for sharing with us.
Hi, I'm Gabby again, as you can tell from the lack of hat. As you can probably guess, my main recommendation for the IHSS program would be keep funding it. And my secondary recommendation would just be to pay people for drive times, especially if they live far from a pharmacy, a hospital, or the nearest doctor's office. Thank you very much.